What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Get Jabby. I'm ACHARA KIRK. Now, we had episode 9 of House of the Dragon drop, and obviously, I'm going to check out this video from ScreenCrush. We've been doing these breakdowns and details you missed Easter egg videos from ScreenCrush, which have been very, very interesting. Thank you so much, ScreenCrush, for allowing us to react to this. Very, very appreciative of your breakdowns to help us understand more of what we didn't get on the first watch. Last episode was pretty interesting. A lot of stuff is being set up, but I couldn't believe when I saw the thumbnail on this. It says there's 121 Easter eggs. What the heck? Is this like the most Easter eggs ever in a House of the Dragon episode? I need to know. So you guys, before we get into this, please don't forget to subscribe, click that bell icon with all notifications turned on so you know whenever we drop a new video, and upvote this video if you are enjoying what you're watching. I am ready to learn. That's the inner nerd in me coming out. Anyway, let's do this.
Do you love me?
You imbecile.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I am Ryan Erie, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in episode 9 of House of the Dragon. Guys, we went really deep into this one, and we're going to explain all of the character parallels to classic Game of Thrones and why this episode shows us why the dragons died out and why the Targaryen dynasty fell. So let's get to it. First of all, we have not talked about how the opening titles have been changing the past few episodes. Like we discussed before, the opening titles showed the Targaryen bloodlines flowing through a model of old Valyria, because Valyrian blood runs through their veins. So each sigil on this opening represents a person from House Targaryen or one of the houses they married into. A couple episodes ago, a Daemon sigil was introduced in the shape of the helmet that he wore at the Heir's tourney in episode 1. Now, Laena's sigil was flooded after this happened. But her sigil still flows into his twin girls, Baela and Rhaena. Just as the classic Game of Thrones credits showed us what parts of Westeros we were going to see, these opening credits feature characters that we're going to see in the episode. So Daemon, Rhaenyra, and their children don't show up in this episode's credits, at least not prominently. Right here, we can see the sigil of Viserys being covered in blood after his death. And in the background here, we see Rhaenyra because she is in the background of this story. She is someone who is referenced but never seen. A big new change is Viserys' blood flowing into Alicent's sigil, but then we see the 4 bloodlines representing Alicent's children. Helaena is the insect because she has an affinity for bugs. Aegon has what I think is a female figure because I'm guessing he likes to whore around. Aemon is a sapphire because in the book he replaces his missing eye with a sapphire.
Who's the fourth kid?
Actually, you know what? I'm not sure. Let me Google it real quick. Oh, no. Oh, God. Oh, there's some kind of virus on my phone now. Stupid free Wi-Fi. Look, I'll look that up in a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I remember. The 4th kid is Daeron, and he lives in Old Town. Aegon and Helaena both flow into their twins, Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, and their 3rd kid, Maelor. Now, the camera quickly moves past Rhaenyra's sigil, which is the Valyrian steel necklace that Daemon gave her. And speaking of Daemon, I think this is him here, because the next blood flows are the 2 kids that he has with Rhaenyra, Aegon the Younger, and Viserys. And then we get into the actual episode, which is really a giant game of Where's Aegon? We begin the episode with a solitary piano note underscoring shots of an empty King's Landing. Now, the single piano notes are haunting because the instrument is all alone, and it makes the music feel empty, kind of like the place that we're looking at. We start on a shot of the empty Iron Throne to emphasize the point of this episode. The king is dead, and this empty chair needs to be filled.
I hadn't really thought about that. I appreciate his breaking it down like that because I definitely felt that while I was watching it. The immediate thought was, oh my gosh, it feels so empty. It feels so desolate. And I thought that it was just because everybody was in mourning because the king had died. But I didn't realize until later on that actually no one really knew that the king had died until the little kid went to tell Talia. It's so interesting how you can feel the thing, but you don't really know why. And so, yeah, I'm just appreciative of that.
Now, if you want to go very deep into foreshadowing, this is also reminiscent of the last day this throne ever existed. We also see this empty courtyard, and if that courtyard looks familiar, it's because Cersei will one day create her war map of Westeros in this same courtyard. Now, remember this courtyard because it's a location that shows the progress of the Green Council's takeover of King's Landing. The small council chamber room is also empty, with Chekhov's attendance balls in the middle of the table. Now, later, this room is ground zero for greedy people who use the king's death as an opportunity to seize power for the good of the realm. So, what we've seen in this show is that the kingdom has slowly been eaten away from the inside. Viserys Viserys thought that he could trust people like Otto, but in fact, they have actually been threatening the kingdom.
I'd completely forgotten about the rats and how that was symbolic of showing how the kingdom or Viserys' rule was just kind of taken apart from the inside by malicious forces. And it's so funny. I remember when we started watching the show, we both really liked Otto Hightower, and I saw a comment and they were just like, oh, just wait and see. And sure enough, our opinion of him has completely changed because we see him for who he is now and how much he's been plotting to get the throne for himself or to exert his own influence over the kingdom. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about the show as well, is how you can go from really liking one character. Sir Kristen Cole's another great example, but you can go from liking one character to then really, really disliking them or outright hating them in an episode or two. It's incredible. I love it.
Now, in past episodes, these balls have been used to give subtle hints about who is a green and who is a black. Like Alicent's ball is green.
You keep saying that. What is a green and what is a black? It all just looks like different shades of gray to me.
Oh,
yeah, the book actually makes a bigger deal out of this. So the blacks are people at court who side with Rhaenyra because the traditional Targaryen colors are red and black. But the greens are the people at court who side with Alicent because remember, she wore a green dress to Rhaenyra's wedding feast. And green is the color the Hightowers use to call their banners to war. Although in the book, it's a little different. Alicent wears the green dress to a party celebrating her 5-year anniversary with Viserys. Now, normally, a woman would wear the colors of her husband's house, so this was seen as her asserting the authority of Hightowers over the court of King's Landing. Now, for instance, a little later, we see Jasper Wilde, the Master of Laws, wearing dark green. But back to the empty council chamber. The window here is left open, implying that one of the 7 gods, the stranger, who represents death, was allowed in to claim the life of Viserys. We also see the stairs where Rhaenyra was forced to endure a several-minute tracking shot moments after giving birth. And then the score switches to light piano chords, following by a thud of doom. Literally underscoring that something ominous is building up in King's Landing. And then a boy crosses the future map of the courtyard, and on these stairs he walks by a dragon torch. And we never saw these in Game of Thrones because Robert Baratheon would have ordered them all removed.
Kill every Targaryen I get my hands on.
This boy is more than likely one of Viserys' servants who discovered his body, and he tells the news to Alicent's handmaiden Talia, who we first saw here.
Talia, not now.
Yeah.
And now we've seen that she is an informant for Daemon's former mistress, Mysaria, aka the Queen of Whispers, aka the White Worm. Now we're going to talk a lot more about her in a bit. When Alicent hears about Viserys, it breaks her. She genuinely came to love the man. But not only that, she actually cared for him as his body disintegrated. Now they don't talk about this in the show, but she was also a companion to Viserys' grandfather, King Jaehaerys, the old king from the prologue. So she watched that old man slowly die for years and now watched her husband go through the same experience. This was hard for her. Now the first person she tells is her dad, the Hands of the King. And we learn that she did indeed truly misinterpret Viserys' last words.
You told me you wish for Aegon to be king.
Now, we know that's just not true. Viserys was higher than a cat's back on Milk of the Poppy and thought that he was talking to Rhaenyra about Aegon's prophecy. Now, maybe Alicent didn't realize he was tripping, or maybe she chose not to realize this. Because
either way, it
if
doesn't
she
matter.
interprets his words just so, then she can justify making her son king. Either way, Alicent is an idiot. She's a kind-hearted idiot, but a woman who has a lot of hang-ups that I'll talk about later on.
Yeah.
But I do like this motivation that they've given her. In the book, Rhaenyra and Alicent are portrayed as, I guess, a little more power-hungry, but in the show, we see that they genuinely believe that they are doing the right thing.
I appreciate that, though. I feel like it makes them more likable in a way because it just kind of softens the edges a little bit and just makes them seem more human. Not that wanting power is something that is not human. Obviously, we know that that is something that humans want, but there is something nice about seeing their softer sides and seeing how they approach things as women, as mothers, and all of the different facets that might influence their choices. And so I appreciate that departure from the books, if that is indeed the case.
Alicent wants to follow her husband's final wishes, and Rhaenyra wants to fulfill Aegon's prophecy. Otto doesn't really care if Aegon being crowned was Viserys' last wish, but he's really happy to take advantage of Alicent's naivete. So next, Talia lights candles in a window, probably a kind of code to Mysaria. Next, we go to an event that the book calls the Green Council, and that's also the title of this episode. This is the meeting where the Small Council plots to steal Rhaenyra's crown. Now, we have the aforementioned Jasper Wilde, Master of Laws, Master of Ships, Tywin Lannister. He's probably Team Green because Rhaenyra spurned his douchey twin brother, Jason, a few episodes ago.
This is why men wage war, because a woman would never be ready for the battle in time.
And Tyland is also the ancestor of Tyrion Lannister from Classic Thrones.
Yeah.
I drink and I know things.
Now, Jason and Tyland are twins, and you'll notice that twins keep popping up in the series.
Yeah.
Daemon and Laena have twin girls. Helena and
with that?
Aegon have twins as well. And a large part of the episode features twin brothers, Eric with an A and Eric with an E, Cargyle. Now, I think twins keep popping up in this story because it is essentially about twin claims to the Iron Throne. So we're seeing a recurring theme of two. The series prologue begins with two claims to the Iron Throne. There are two Aegons. Rhaenyra and Laenor lead double lives, and the Dance of the Dragons is splitting the realm in two. This is Grand Maester Owly, and finally we have the Master of Coin, Lyman Beesbury. He's the only member of the council on Rhaenyra's side, and notice he is wearing black. After Viserys' death is announced, Tyland Lannister drops this nefarious line.
We may proceed now with the full assurance of his blessing on our long-laid plans.
Again, the book makes it seem like Alicent led this charge, and here we see that this was actually all kept a secret from her. But then again, the book is written from the point of view of unreliable narrators. Otto then talks about the gold cloaks that they control. Now, the gold cloaks are the City Watch, basically the police of King's Landing. You'll remember that Daemon was the leader of the gold cloaks in the first episode. In fact, the gold cloaks they wear was actually his idea, and the men of the City Watch are fiercely loyal to him. Otto is saying that Daemon still has some friends among the local cops, and that they want to weed them out. The gold cloaks are also a lot rowdier than the Kingsguard. They don't have to take vows of celibacy, they can be baseborn, and the pay is a lot less. Now, like I said, Lord Beesbury is the Master of Coin, and he must not be very good at his job because Tyland announces,
The treasury is well in hand. The gold will be divided for safekeeping.
So, to keep the treasury safe and away from Rhaenyra, Tyland has split it between 4 places: the Iron Bank in Bravos, the Vaults of Casterly Rock, Old Town, and King's Landing. And they did all of this without the knowledge of the Master of Coin. Tyland's title is Master of Ships, and this is probably why, because he could secretly move this gold to all these different cities, which are all on major ports. Now, in the book, no one really knows how Beesbury died. There are even accounts that he was sent to the dungeon and lived out his days there. But here we see that he was actually killed by his work.
I will have no part.
Criston Cole killed Beesbury because he essentially accused Alicent of treason. And as we kind of see later on, he seems to have transferred his feelings for Rhaenyra to Alicent.
Everything you feel for me is your queen.
But this unrequited love is a much better fit for Sir Criston because it allows both him and Alicent to have feelings for one another while remaining chaste and pure. And then Harold Westerling, commander of the Kingsguard, draws against Sir Criston, and notice how Tyland just immediately gets the F out of the way between them. He's truly the ancestor of Tywin Lannister, the guy who always knows how to pick the best side and avoid danger. Westerling keeps his honor and refuses to be an assassin for Otto. He hands in his white cloak, and I have a suspicion that he will sneak off to join Rhaenyra. This is like another former member of the Kingsguard who defected to the enemy, Barristan Selmy.
I am a knight. I shall die.
Right.
A knight.
Remember Westerling for later, because I got a theory about him.
Oh, okay. I can't wait to hear that. But just before we jump into that, I just wanted to say one thing real quick. I guess I hadn't realized this whole unrequited love angle between Alicent and Sir Criston Cole totally makes sense for their personalities, because Alicent is so hung up on tradition and doing what she thinks is right according to propriety and all of that. And then meanwhile, we have Criston Cole, who is very devoted to his belief in his cause. And so it makes perfect sense that these two people would want to engage in this unrequited love relationship, because they can still stay true to their beliefs and feel good about, you know, not doing the deed and having the unrequited feelings. They never have to break their promises to themselves.
So, as they plot to take over the kingdom, Beesbury's blood starts to pool in the small council table. The opening credits focus on bloodlines, but the flip side of that is the blood spilled by the struggle to have power over those same bloodlines. They mention,
Storm's End is of concern. We may not assume the loyalty of Lord Boris, but he has 4 daughters.
So, Boris Baratheon is the current Lord of Storm's End. Most of the Baratheons are the same, kind of like Robert Baratheon in Classic Thrones. They're loud, stubborn, violent, and always up for a rowdy time.
Right.
So Boris is the son of Boromon, this guy who offered Rhaenys his favor in episode 1. Boris is also the cousin of Rhaenys.
Hey, I thought the Baratheons, hated the Targaryens, like Robert said.
No,
Kill
not
every
always.
Targaryen I get my hands on.
Oh, but it hasn't always been that way,
Yeah.
Doug. In fact, during Aegon's conquest, the Baratheons at Storm's End were one of the first great houses to declare for Aegon. There's even a Targaryen in the Baratheon family tree who goes back to before Aegon, and that would be Aegon Targaryen. After Robert's rebellion, this Targaryen lineage is how his allies justified Robert replacing a Targaryen king. So they're right to be worried about the loyalties of House Baratheon. They're stubborn and they've already declared for Rhaenyra. They were also one of the few great houses to vote for Rhaenys to be queen at that great council from the prologue. So they would actually have no problem with a woman like Rhaenyra being queen. Storm's End is also very close to King's Landing, which would give Rhaenyra a strategic location on the other side of King's Landing. So the city would be trapped between Storm's End and her seat at Dragonstone. And we actually saw Storm's End a few episodes ago when Rhaenyra cut short her tour by a couple months because she had the hots for her uncle. Next, Alicent goes to see her daughter Helena, who is basically spoiling this entire show for everyone. Helena seems to have the gift of green sight or prophecy, just like her great-grandfather Aegon the Conqueror. She predicted that Aemon would lose an eye to get a dragon.
You'll have to close an eye.
And she talked about these threads of green and black.
Spool of green, spool of black. Dragons.
Which foreshadow the war against the Greens and the Blacks. She has another prophecy that's a major spoiler, so I won't say what it is. And here,
there is a beast beneath the boards.
She is predicting the end of the episode, when Rhaenys brings her dragon out from beneath the dragon pit. Now there are
Wait! So the thing that Jabby was so obsessed with in the episode, that's a spoiler? Oh my god, I want to know now. I need to know. But I do appreciate ScreenCrush for not spoiling the show in that way. And that's the reason why we've been watching his videos, because while we appreciate the breakdowns, and probably other channels might be doing even more detailed breakdowns that tell us more about what is to come based on the books, I appreciate that Ryan here is trying very hard to just break down what we're seeing in the episode rather than giving too much away about what will happen. But now I'm going, wait, what was that? What does that prophecy mean? But I guess we'll know in the next episode.
A few other things that happen in the book that could also be referenced in this prophecy, but again, I don't want to spoil them. But book readers know blood and cheese. Am I right? She's making a needlepoint of her favorite animal, an insect. Now, it's common for noble ladies to fill their time with craft projects like this, and Sansa Stark was always very good at them.
Fine work, as always.
Her twins on the ground are playing with two dragons, foreshadowing the dance of the dragons that is yet to come. And these candle holders are shaped like the seven-pointed star of the seven gods.
I missed that.
So then, the great hunt for Aegon II begins. In the book, there are different accounts of where he was. Septa Eustace, who was a Green supporter, said that he was in the arms of a noblewoman, while most accounts say that he was up to activities that were far more depraved. Otto sends twin knights to the Kingsguard, Sir Eric and Eric, to go find him. Alicent even confused them in the last episode.
Yeah.
It is, Sir Eric. You need to wait.
I'm Eric, Your Grace.
Of course.
As you can see in this episode, the two of them are on the fence with their loyalties, and by the end of the episode, it seems like Sir Eric is definitely Team Black. He helps Rhaenys escape the castle and has a personal disdain for Aegon. Meanwhile, Alicent is sending Criston Cole and Aemon to find her son.
Aegon must be found, and he must be brought to me.
Yeah, why are she and her dad looking for them separately?
Because if Otto finds Aegon, then he will order the deaths of Rhaenyra and her children. But if Alicent finds him, then she will ask Rhaenyra to surrender her crown peacefully.
This was something that I saw in the comments that people thought that we didn't understand. I got that, but I think I wasn't really able to articulate what it meant for them to be, trying to get Aegon separately. So yes, I understood, but I was saying that depending on who finds him first, that'll change the fate of the kingdom. And it would in a way, because if he was found by his grandfather, then his grandfather would influence him to kill Rhaenyra. And then if he's taken to his mother, then things would be different because she wouldn't want that to happen. So yeah, that totally makes sense.
Those are a good idea.
Not one bit. Now, Aemon is going to be one of the most important characters in this series, and it's telling that he is a second son in a show that is being shaped by second sons.
Whatever do you mean by that?
Well, a second son does not inherit title or any lands, so they're always more ambitious, and thus they make for more interesting stories. A second son wants to disrupt the status quo. Otto is the second son who was goaded into action by his older brother. Daemon is a second son who never had a place at court, so he became a warrior. We even see Daemon like this with his two two daughters. Rhaena was born a few minutes later, but she is the daughter that Daemon favors less because her egg won't even hatch. Now, until today, Aemond wasn't even second in line for the throne. He was 8th in line, but now we find out just how ambitious he is.
It is I who trains with the sword, who rides the largest dragon in the world. It is I who should be...
I like how the show used this moment to not only show us what Aemond wants, but also to give him common ground with Criston Cole.
I know what it is to toil for what others are freely given.
Remember, Criston Cole is not really of noble blood, and he had to literally fight to earn a place on the Kingsguard when Otto wanted to choose someone of a noble house. Criston's lack of pedigree is also why Rhaenyra rejected his wedding proposal.
It is my duty to marry a nobleman from a great house.
Meanwhile, Otto has ordered that Rhaenys be locked up in her room. Now, this is a change from the book where she was still on Driftmark during the Green Council, but now she's in King's Landing because in the last episode, they were appealing the succession of her husband's seat. Now, they're holding Rhaenys because they're not sure whose side she'll take. Last episode, she was blaming Rhaenyra for her son's death.
Yet you did worse than that with Laenor.
But she was also wearing black. And this episode, she just resents being locked up and doesn't seem to have much of a dog in this fight.
Excuse me?
Sorry, I mean, doesn't have much of a teeth-filed down child in this fight.
That's better.
The other thing about Rhaenys is that remember, 20 years earlier, she had the better claim to the Iron Throne.
The Iron Throne was yours by blood and by temperament.
But her father, Jaehaerys, rather than name her heir, decided to let the male lords and scholars of Westeros decide the succession at the Great Council. 14 petitions were heard, but only 2 were taken seriously, Rhaenys and Viserys. It is said that the lords of Westeros voted 20-1 in Viserys' favor. So now Otto is trying to secure the loyalty of the people who voted for Viserys. And he's trying to minimize the people who voted for Rhaenys. These are the people who wouldn't mind seeing a woman on the throne, so Otto sees them as potential allies for Rhaenyra. We see Otto drafting tiny scrolls that he will send with ravens to all the great houses. Now in the book, these include a raven to Dalton Greyjoy, aka the Red Kraken on Pike. He just assumes that Rhaenys will declare for her niece, and her husband the Sea Snake commands the largest fleet in the kingdom. So he wants to secure the ships of the Iron Fleet. Unlike Dany, he won't forget about them.
Well, Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces.
In the book, Rhaenyra gets the loyalty of most of the eastern lands, including the island of Evenfall. Now, this is the seat of House Tarth, as in Brienne of Tarth, and that place got a special mention in the last episode.
The ravens came in from...
Evenfall, princess.
Rhaenyra also won the support of the Starks, but the north is so far away that it probably won't matter much in the war. But we do see Otto testing the loyalties of various lords in this episode. Most of these lords are unnamed, but this guy who initially declines to break his vow is Lord Merryweather. Now, Merryweather's descendant will eventually be Hand of the King under Aerys Targaryen II, the Mad King. Aerys ends up banishing him and installing Tywin Lannister. And as we know, Tywin turned on Aerys and helped install Robert Baratheon as king in Robert's Rebellion. So, well done, Merryweather. Your house's greatest contribution to history is its absence. But there are other houses that uphold their vows.
House Fell keeps its sworn oath to the princess.
Why is
House
that
Fell
familiar?
is located in the Stormlands, just north of Storm's End, and they have declared support for House Baratheon. Again, you can see how the Greens are going to have trouble winning the loyalty of the Baratheon house. And the bald guy here who pretends to bend the knee to Aegon is Lord Caswell. Remember, he was the first person to congratulate Rhaenyra on her child, and the only person to greet her upon her arrival last episode. He ends up being hanged in the same square where Cersei painted her map of the Seven Kingdoms. And here's another thing I don't think we've pointed out in the past about the Iron Throne Room. The columns feature relief sculptures, probably depicting Aegon's conquest. Robert would have had these columns remade. So in the original series, they're actually covered with carvings of vines. Meanwhile, Larys is trying to clamp down on the spy network of the White Worm. Larys is another second son, someone whose lack of title led him into cruelty and ambition. People like to call him the Littlefinger of the show, but I actually think this guy's way more devious than Littlefinger. He locks up servants he suspects of being spies, so they can't spread the word of Viserys' death. Now, in the books, the Green Council kept Viserys locked up in his room for 9 days, until they could not ignore the stink anymore.
Oh.
Disgusting!
So, to find Aegon, Aemon takes Criston Cole to the Street of Silk, and they're wearing disguises, much like Daemon and Rhaenyra when they visited this exact same location in Episode 3. Criston Cole says,
Every woman is an image of the mother, to be spoken of with reverence.
Oh my god, Criston Cole and Alicent were made for each other, man.
Yes!
They're both people who hide behind their religions to justify not taking what they actually want in life. And as we see later in the episode, Alicent is extremely sexually repressed, while Criston Cole expresses his repression like this.
Well, I have no part!
What you say?
They find out that Aegon is way more depraved than they thought, and he has to get his jollies in other ways. And by the way, this madam here, she totally punched Aemon's V card, right?
How you've grown.
The twins discover discover the really twisted stuff that Aegon is into. Boy fights. They sharpen the teeth of these kids and grow out their nails and make them fight like abused dogs. I haven't seen kids treated this badly since Peacemaker.
Yeah.
This truly shocks Sir Eric, and he uses the event to try to persuade his brother to switch sides.
Aegon spends many a night in this place. Do you see now what he is?
We even see a kid with bleach blonde hair, and it's implied that this is one of Aegon's bastards. So this SOB likes to breed his own sons and then enter them into these fights so he can bet on them.
That is sick. I hadn't even thought about that possibility. I think I was just so disgusted by this situation and this whole thing that was happening, because I'm like, no, it's bad enough when you have dog fights or cockfights or any sort of animals just fighting in a ring like that. Like, it's disturbing anyway. But then to see little children have their teeth filed and their nails sharpened in order to be able to fight to, I don't know what, fight to the death. I hope not. It's just awful, and that's entertainment. I hadn't even thought about the idea that this poor little kid hiding there probably would have to fight one day. I just thought that he was hiding there for reasons, but this makes me really sad.
He's like a twisted combination of Joffrey and King Craster. That was the guy up north of the wall who married generations of his daughters in Classic Thrones. In fact, we do get several indications that Aegon will be another Joffrey. He relishes in praise. He's emotionally unstable, and he delights in being cruel. Also, the product of inbreeding. So, after several days or hours go by, they finally dispose of Viserys' body. The women wrapping him up are the Silent Sisters, an order of the church that follows the god the Stranger. They've taken vows of chastity and silence. Now, we saw the sisters in the last episode wrapping up Vaemon's corpse, and they appeared all the way back in the Game of Thrones' very first pilot episode. One key thing to notice here is that Viserys' crown is placed on his body. Now, later, they're going to crown Aegon with the crown of Aegon the Conqueror. That crown was worn by his son, Maegor the Cruel, the worst, most evil king that Westeros ever had. Now, when Jaehaerys became king, he wanted to put that crown in storage and had a new one made, so that way he could symbolically put Maegor's cruelty behind him. Viserys' crown is actually the same one that was worn by his grandfather Jaehaerys. Now, in the book, a knight named Sir Stefflin Darklyn steals this crown and takes it to Rhaenyra on Dragonstone. And here, I think that role might be fulfilled by Harold Westerling, who walked away from the Kingsguard.
I recognize no authority but
I approve.
And until there is one, I have no place here.
One of the most important scenes in this episode is the exchange between Rhaenys and Alicent, and it really cuts to the heart of these women who are driving the action of the show.
Love this scene.
Alicent finally speaks her truth.
You should have been queen.
And Alicent has been forced to accept that in Westeros, women can never have real agency. After all, she spent her entire life being the brood sow of a king. But she does say,
"We do not rule, but we may guide the men that do. Gently."
Which never works out. Cersei thought she could guide and control Joffrey, and he just ignored her and did whatever cruel stuff he wanted to do. She also says,
"Content to hunt and study his histories."
Which is a good point. Viserys always seemed more interested in building up his model of Old Valyria, a dead kingdom, than he did in building up Westeros, a current kingdom. Alicent tempts Rhaenys by saying that her granddaughter could be made the heir of Driftmark like she wanted.
If it's Driftmark you want, you shall have it. For you and your granddaughters to pass on as you see fit.
Now, this would mean that at least Rhaenys would be able to create a future where her granddaughters aren't denied power like she was. She also knows that these kids are her only remaining blood relatives. Alicent is trying to win her over because she's worried about her allegiance, and especially about her dragon, Melis, also known as the Red Queen. Dragons are like nuclear weapons in Westeros, and each side is going to try to secure as many dragons as they can. But Rhaenys understands that Alicent is actually asking her to be a doormat for a man for her entire life.
You desire not to be free, but to make a window in the wall of your prison.
This is actually a neat visual callback to this shot from last episode, where a chair in the foreground makes it look like Alicent is behind bars. Thanks to Think's story for that observation. Now, this conversation really gets to Alicent in ways that are going to pay off a bit later. So, Otto finally meets Mysaria face to face. She's been secretly informing him for years. Remember, she was the one who spread word of Rhaenyra and Daemon's dalliances on the Street of Silk. Now, it turns out she's even more ambitious than we thought. She's basically kidnapped Aegon and is holding him hostage for a promise to end the boy fights. So Mysaria is very much like Varys from Classic Thrones, who is also known as the Spider or the Master of Whispers. Like her, he ran a spy network around King's Landing and had a soft spot for kids.
Children are blameless.
She leads the twins to find Aegon in the Great Sept. Now, this is not the Sept of Baelor, which we saw in Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. I thought it was. I was like, oh, hold on. That looks really familiar. Is that the same one where they had that really cool explosion?
Spoiler. This is the Great Sept that was replaced by the Sept of Baelor. Now, I thought about identifying all the statues of the gods in the room, but you know what? The 7 gods are the only gods in Game of Thrones who never do any magic at all, so they're not real, and thus they are not worth naming. Aegon is really against the idea of being king, as he has been for the entire series.
You can move to cut off any challenge to her succession.
Then I won't.
You are the challenge!
The Targaryens. They either want the crown too much or too little.
I don't want.
Right.
There's a scuffle, and Alicent ends up with control over Aegon, and she does not wait to lord this over her dad to try to prove to herself that she is actually the one who has power. Like I said, Rhaenys really got to her.
Yeah,
she
she
calls her
did.
dad out for manipulating her.
I see that now. Rather, I've been a piece that you moved about the board.
Even though that's exactly what she's doing to her own son, Aegon. But Otto,
Right.
like any parent, knows exactly how to cut her down to size.
Yeah, he
You
does.
look so much like your mother.
Yeah, man.
So what he's saying here is, you are like your mother, soft and weak, so don't try to play a man's game with me.
Right.
And then we go to this creepy meeting between Larys and Alicent. Right away, we know something's up when Alicent starts to take off her shoes and stockings.
Yeah.
And we see this close-up of the beetle on Larys'
Oh, it's a
cane.
beetle,
Remember, we saw
okay.
the same sigil on the prisoners that he hired to burn down Harrenhal, thereby killing his father and brother. And Helena is also knitting a beetle. Oh my god, I just figured out. Just thought of a huge spoiler from the book, so I can't actually say it, but damn, in like a year or
What?
so, there's going to be a heck of an Easter egg, and I'm telling you, that whole Under the Boards prophecy thing, blood and cheese. It's a big deal, but don't look it up if you don't want to.
No!
Larys has the title of Lord Confessor, basically the lead torturer. He wants Alicent's go-ahead to remove the rival spy network of Massaria, that's the White Worm. And to pay Larys back for his efforts, she displays her feet so he can... Larys had more of a foot fetish than he would have directed Pulp Fiction. So I guess this is because his foot's disabled, but also it's like
makes
part
sense.
of this weird puritanical sexual repression of this
Yeah.
society. Basically, Alicent has never been pleasured by a man, so she thinks this is how it's done.
Or why does Larys want the White Worm out of the way?
Well, I think that Larys actually is the one who's running the boy fights, and he was using them to gain some kind of control or manipulation over powerful people like Prince Aegon. Now, since Massaria wants to end the boy fights, Larys wants her out of the picture. Meanwhile, Sir
Okay.
Eric rescues Rhaenys and takes her through these secret passages past the skull of Balerion the Black Dread. Now, this was the dragon of Aegon the Conqueror, and Viserys, and later Cersei will do this to the skull. This skull has also been used for a lot of symbolic meaning. This is where Viserys told Rhaenyra about Aegon's prophecy, and just a couple episodes later, we saw a rat perched on this skull, symbolizing the eyes that watched her on the Street of Silk, and the eyes of the people who are eating away at the Targaryen dynasty. Or, you know what, maybe Larys is a warg and he's inside of these rats watching everyone and munching on some tasty, tasty blood after the wedding. Nom, 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 nom.
Interesting.
Then we see a hooded figure walking away from Massaria's burning home. And we get the point that Larys is behind this fire, but I doubt if Massaria is really dead.
When that happened, I had a really strange moment where in the moment where as I was watching the episode and I saw this house, this place burn down, I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. And then the next day, today, I'm just like pottering around. And then suddenly it's like the pennies dropped in my head and I went, oh shit, that was Massaria's place. Right, because that makes sense because he, you know, that's his signature. Larys just gets people to burn down people's houses like he did with his family home, and then now he's doing it with Massaria's home or place of business or whatever. But it's funny how things happen like that, where as you're watching it, the pieces aren't really falling into place and you're just like, yeah, okay. And then later on, many hours later, it's like your brain does some processing and then suddenly out of nowhere, it's like, boom, light bulbs switch on.
All the small folk of the city are being forced into the dragon pit for Aegon's coronation, and they're being driven forward like sheep. And this is underscored by showing us actual sheep.
Oh, that's right.
Rhaenys is worried about being pulled away from the Kingsway until she realizes that the crowd is taking her straight to her dragon, the Red Queen. At the coronation, we see this scroll, which is a prayer to the Seven, which I'm not going to bother reading out because those gods aren't real. Alicent then shares a carriage with Aegon. Now, it's the same carriage that she shared with him years ago when he was a baby, back in episode 2. In that scene, a young Rhaenyra was mad at her father because she assumed that her dad would love Aegon more because he was a boy. And now, here is Aegon all grown and assuming that his dad loved Rhaenyra more, and that is why she made him heir. But Alicent tries to control her son's emotions. She passes on Aegon's dagger, saying that Viserys wanted him to have it. And this is actually the moment when the Targaryen dynasty begins to fall apart. Aegon's dream showed him the Targaryens' destiny, to destroy the ice zombies and end the long night. This dagger is a symbol of that secret passed down from king to heir. And now that chain is broken.
Yeah, it's broken.
Aegon does not know the history of this dagger or what a Targaryen king's true purpose is. All he knows is that he gets to have a pretty sweet dagger. Instead of using that dagger to protect the realm, he'll use it to kill his enemies. And we actually have a video coming out about this in just a couple days, so subscribe so you don't miss it. So as Alicent is trying to guide her son on how to rule, his only answer is,
"Daughter,
Do you love me?
and you can see the look on Alicent's face. She's thinking,
I've made a huge mistake.
you imbecile."
and then the crowds enter the dragon pit in all its glory, far from the ruins that we saw in season 7 of Game of Thrones.
So that part where she's like, "You imbecile," I love that because it's not the response that you would imagine that a mother would give to a child. I mean, maybe that's a true response. Like maybe your mother would go, "You're an idiot. Of course I love you." I think the response that we were all expecting was, "Yes, of course I love you." And I appreciate that they just went with "you imbecile" because he is an imbecile and he is not fit to rule.
Thrones. Now, they chose the dragon pit because it's a symbol of Targaryen power and because it's the largest space in the city for holding a crowd. They want to make it look like the entirety of the small folk approve of Aegon's coronation. Now, Otto smiles like a sly child with a pocket full of dead bird. Much like Tywin Lannister, he is a hand to a kid who is also his grandfather, and he assumes that he'll be able to control his cruel grandson. Rhaenys watching from the crowds is a bit like Arya Stark watching her dad's execution in another episode 9, this time of season 1 of the original Game of Thrones.
Right.
Except Rhaenys' escape is a lot more empowering. So then the crowning ceremony begins, where Aegon is given the crown of Aegon I, and they also give him Aegon's sword, Blackfire. That sword was also used by Maegor the Cruel, so they put it in sword storage until this ceremony. People really hated Maegor. So Aegon II having the sword and crown of the Aegon is meant to legitimize him in the eyes of the public, and I think it works. Just like in the book, Kristen Cole places the crown on Aegon's head. But there's a small difference from the book which claims that Septon Eustace blessed Aegon II because the High Septon was out in Old Town. Aegon is crowned King of the Andals, the First Men, and the Rhoynar. And actually, we don't hear much about the Rhoynar. They're a smaller ethnic group than the Andals and the First Men, and they settled in the Riverlands right here. Now, do you remember the dream that Viserys had about his son being crowned king?
The dream, it was clearer than a memory. A night placed our son upon the Iron Throne, as the bells of the Grand Sept tolled, and all the dragons roared as one.
All of that happens here. The bells even ring out in celebration of Aegon's coronation.
Aegon the King!
Right. And then a dragon
when Aegon
came.
gets applause, it transforms him. It's like Homelander at the end of season 3. This kid discovers that he digs the crowds and the praise.
Yeah.
But then the beast under the floorboards rears its giant fire-breathing head as Rhaenys ruins Aegon's coronation party. The crowd panics, but look how calm Kristen Cole is. Now, I know these people see dragons a lot, but damn, dude, my guy is Iceman.
Yeah.
Rhaenys has them right where she wants them. She could end this entire war before it starts with a single Dracarys, but instead of blasting them, she pauses. Maybe it's because Alicent shields her son, and Rhaenys recognizes a mother's love. Or
I did think about that when I watched it. I was like, oh my gosh, for Alicent maybe not being the bravest character all the time, she is a mother to her core and she loves her children. And so, yeah, like any mother would do, she stands in front of her child and will take the brunt of whatever assault is coming at her first. So yeah, it does make sense to me that maybe Rhaenys recognizes this in Alicent and as a mother herself, it gives her pause and makes her kind of stop in her tracks and rethink what she's about to do. But I want to know why she did it. Oh my God.
Or maybe she doesn't want to be a kinslayer, but I think it's more likely that she just hasn't chosen a side yet. So she flies away,
more
probably
likely,
to
yeah.
Evenfall to be with her dying husband. Now, like, none of that happens in the book at all, but it's cool. And it sets us up for an even bigger showdown in the finale.
I was comprehensive. There were a lot of things to think about. Like I always say, I really appreciate when we get this like mixture of Easter eggs in the breakdowns, as well as kind of breaking down the episode in the way that you might do if you were like a scholar studying literature or like film theory or something like that. And so I loved seeing him break down some of the visual things that we were seeing. Like it never really crossed my mind that in that shot with Alicent where they have the windows in the foreground and it kind of looks like she's in a prison. Like I didn't realize that was what they were trying to show us visually through that shot, but it was nice to have that to come back to when Rhaenys says that, you know, you're just trying to put a window in your prison. And that scene was so powerful as well. I find a lot of the interactions between the female characters really interesting. They are powerful women in a patriarchy, and it's like, how do you navigate your way around that? How do you find your strength? How do you achieve your goals? And they were all kind of going about it in different ways, which I find really fascinating. I also really enjoyed the explanation about the twins. It was one of those things as well, you know, where it's like you notice it in your mind and you're like, oh yeah, there seem to be a lot of twins in this show. I mean, how many twins do you know in your everyday life? I know maybe a few. It seems like there are a lot of twins in this show, and so it totally makes sense to have them symbolize the way things are going in two different directions, you know, and maybe just the duality of things where you could have one person who represents good, one person represents evil, you know, one person going for the High Towers, one person going for the Targaryens. Like, it's a really interesting concept, and to have them show that visually as well is really, really interesting. Helena is definitely one to watch, especially after having watched more of these breakdown videos. I definitely know that I have to pay attention to what she is saying because she is someone who has the ability to see the future. I can't wait to see what prophecy is going to come true. Like, she predicted so much that came true already, and Ryan is trying so hard not to spoil what's going to happen next or what's going to happen next season. But of course there's a part of me that's just like, no, but I want to know. Like, I want to break apart everything that she said now or that she's going to say, so I can feel smug when it happens and be like, haha, I saw that. But right now I'm just like, oh, I don't know what Ryan's talking about blood and cheese and whatever. Like, tell me, but don't tell me because I don't want it to be spoiled. So anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know if you found any other Easter eggs or can help me understand anything that I didn't really understand from this breakdown. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. I'm ACHARA KIRK. Ciao.